Welcome to worship with the Universalist Unitarian Church of Peoria. My name is the Reverend Jennifer Innis. It is my great joy to be the minister with this congregation of all ages, all stages of life. Whether you came here for the 5,000th time, or this is your first time here, whoever you are, wherever you come from, whatever your accent, whomever you love, whatever your religious beliefs, you are welcome here. You're welcome as entirely as you are. Ours is a tradition that embraces heresy, a word meaning choosing. Ours is a faith that affirms we need not think alike to believe alike. Our aspiration is to come from a place of love. And by that, we mean not just the warm, tangible feeling, but a real, active caring for each and every person and for the whole world. We affirm that every person is worthy and every person deserves love. And we're firmly committed to the work of this world, to loving it into being, and to the struggle of making it a paradise here for us. That same spirit of love calls us to fight for human rights and to be good stewards of this earth. We recognize, as part of that we are part of a deep network of relationship of the past and the present and the future. This is the ancestral home of the Peoria people. They and other nations were here long before the first European settlers came down the Illinois River. And so we take a moment, as we have been asked to do in service, to recognize the Peoria people for who they were and for who they are today. I want to thank folks for joining us today, whether in person or online. It is no small thing to come into a community and place that is new to you. Help us get to know you by wearing a name tag. We welcome all the questions. Folks are happy to help. And stay after service for coffee in Fellowship Hall or on the Zoom link for conversation there. And see Jesse Laughlin if you have children or if you are new to us. New visitors are welcome to keep children in the sanctuary or check out our education program when the children and youth leave for class during the service. And now I invite you to turn and check your respective devices in this world, in this time and age, to see that they are in worship mode. One never knows. One never knows. I have a few notes for this morning. The big event for this week for the congregation, we have the potluck Thanksgiving dinner in Fellowship Hall on Thursday. We have sign-up sheets in the foyer. We definitely could use entrees, potatoes, beverages, setup and cleanup, all the things. And I really want to invite folks to invite your friends, invite your family, people you might encounter this week who might need a place to be, because this is what we do. And if you have questions, please come see me at this point. You can drop a note to the office. And really, come along. Even if you're make a last minute choice on Thursday morning, it's still just fine. Please come. Let's see. I also want to point out, if you're new and getting to know the congregation a little bit too, that Regina Stanley, our membership coordinator, is offering a member conversation after the service today. So please go and make sure you see her as well. Let's see. Now, next Sunday we're taking a moment to do a little something special for World AIDS Day. December 1st is World AIDS Day, and we're focused on that. We expect to have a guest from Central Illinois Friends join us as part of the service. And I certainly also need to invite folks to, after the service that day or that afternoon, there is a World AIDS Day event at the Carver Center at 3 o'clock. And I think we'll call that good. And now let us enter into worship. I invite you to rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn, number 1017, Building a New Way. It's in the Teal hymnal. I welcome Jean Jost for our opening words.
Good morning. The title today is A Circle of Healing by Starhawk. We are all longing to go home, to someplace we have never been, a place half remembered and half envisioned, where we can only catch glimpses of, from time to time, community. Somewhere where there are people to whom we can speak with passion without having the words catch in our throats. Somewhere a circle of hands which will open to receive us. Eyes will light up as we enter. Voices will celebrate with us whenever we come into our own power. Community means strength that joins our strength to do the work that needs to be done. Arms to hold us when we falter. A circle of healing. A circle of friends. Someplace where we can be free, as our hymn just indicated. That place is also our UU Church. I am glad to be part of it. Thank you for that. Happy Thanksgiving, and I'm grateful to you all.
I invite the New Johnson family forward for our chalice lighting.
Why We're Here by Eric Walker Wickstrom. Here today, in this place, and with these people. May we listen so that we can hear. May we hear so we can feel. May we feel so that we can know. And may we know so that we can change ourselves and this world. May this chalice we light our way.
I'm sending you light to hold you, to heal you. I'm sending you light to hold you in love. I'm sending you light to hold you, to heal you. I'm sending you light, hold you in love. We set aside this moment for reflection, for centering ourselves in this time, in this community, for all the reasons that bring us together. All are welcome during our music for meditation to come forward and light a candle. For those who are online, let these candles be for you. Let us enter into our music for meditation. This is the time for the sharing of joys and sorrows of the congregation. I want to extend healing wishes to all who are struggling with health concerns at this time. There are so many ways in which we all have our challenges and our obstacles and our desire to just plain feel better. We do have a joy that was reported in the book a little bit recently that somebody has received better medication. So that by itself is a joy, and may that continue to be the case. Now, take a moment to ask for your care. I've mentioned in a few different moments that my father, Chuck Innis, had a cancer diagnosis in April. And as of this week, he is in hospice. I will visit him in Massachusetts soon. It occurred to me, my father being one of those large brained engineering types, he had quite a collection of books. It was beautiful, and its fate is being decided as we speak. May they go forth to wonderful places. And also, I want to include a note as we have been remembering and celebrating the lives of a number of people this month, that this coming Saturday, the 30th, we will remember and celebrate Larry Matthews. Larry died of COVID at age 91 earlier in October. He is very much missed by his wife, Terry, and their family. His service has a 10 a.m. visitation, and the service begins at 11 with a lunch to follow. Let us keep Terry and her family in our hearts. I offer a note, a prayer for Thanksgiving from Laurel Littlejohn Gray. In the name of all that is complicated, in the name of all that is complicated, may we enter this week gently. May we welcome all the guests that come to our table, the ambiguity of why bother this year, the joy of celebration and fresh baked pie, the grief of the empty seat that can never be filled, the warmth of candles lit in the dark, the malaise of all we've been told about how to feed our body, the hope of recognition, of feeling filled for the first time in a long time, the fear of, is this safe enough? The loving bustle of ancestry and recipe and tradition, and the horror of history and all the ways it lives on. May we welcome all the guests at our table and all others who come needing a place to call home. There is good news. There is space here. There is plenty of grace here in the name of all that is complicated. Let us share one more moment of quiet together. I invite us to pause and breathe. Amen. Shalom. Salam. And blessed be. Now I invite Jesse forward for our story.
Have you ever wondered why we wonder? What is it about our brains that makes us think about what could be, what might be? Let's wonder a little bit together this morning. What if One Day by Bruce Handy and Ashley Corin? What if one day all the birds flew away? Mornings would be quieter. Skies would be plainer. And the worms could relax. But there are birds. And what if one day all the water disappeared? Beaches would be hard to tell from deserts. Fish would have to adapt more quickly than usual. And soap would not work. But there is water. What if one day the sun never set and there was no night? One day would last forever. Owls and bats would never wake up, and stars would be a secret. But there is night. What if one day every bug crawled and wiggled and flitted away? Poof! There would never be another bee sting, but also no honey. And anteaters would be vegetarians. But there are bugs. What if one day there were no more people? There would be no music, no art, stories, or dancing. Nature could relax. But who would throw sticks for the dogs? But there are people. What if one day something was missing? Not because it flew away or stopped growing or disappeared, but because it hadn't been dreamt of yet. What would you dream of? Maybe that is why we wonder. We wonder to change the world. I invite all the kids and youth and the volunteers to join me for religious education.
The collective gifts of the congregation make it possible for us to be here today. We have received those offerings of service, care, of money in the past, and those lead in a direct line into our lives, whether this is your first Sunday visiting or if we have been here for generations. We receive those gifts, we contribute for our own sake and for that of our children. And when we gather together, what we gather is passed forward to the people that we will never meet. It is good. It is good for those reasons to make an offering during the service. We also send a portion of our gifts out into the world through our Share the Plate program. Half of our undesignated offering goes to a local agency to assist in their good work. For November, our recipient is Lula NFP. And Lula NFP is a group that provides daily food, temporary shelter, clothing, sleeping bags, blankets, all these items that are crucial for folks surviving who do not have homes to go to, who are living on the street or in encampments. And really, the folks who are in these situations are in some of the worst moments in our human experience. They've been suffering trauma, most have mental illness in varying degrees. And so, this is a ministry to our most vulnerable neighbors. So, our Share the Plate offering, one half of the undesignated plate goes to Lula this month, half goes to the church. Please use the envelopes and indicate where your offering might go. Use the QR code in the order of service as well. And thank you for all the gifts. It really makes all of our ministries possible. And now, will the ushers please come forward? Our reading is by the Black female author and leader Adrienne Marie Brown. This is the end of the book Octavia's Brood, a collection of science fiction story from Black, Indigenous, and people of color. As our final tool, we have our collective science fiction, visionary fiction writing workshops. Our premise is that if we want worlds that work for more of us, we have to have more of us involved in the visioning process. One of the ways we perpetuate individualism is by ideating alone, literally coming up with ideas in solitude and then competing to bring them to life. Our workshops are designed to encourage collaborative ideation. Together, we identify issues that are relevant to the local community and build a world in which to explore the issue and possible solutions. In each workshop, we start out by asking ourselves, what in our community needs visions? with the idea that we can apply our collective ideation. We can apply it like a healing salve. We identify lead characters, often pairs or groups of lead characters, to disrupt that solitary hero narrative. And we intentionally move those voices that are often marginalized in our society to the center of the world building. We then build the setting, identifying where we are in time, creating a geography and conditions, naming any shared assumptions we have, and determining what's the major conflict that will be in that work. What is the change our characters seek? Who else is seeking the change? And once these elements are laid out, we send people off to spend time with their writing their stories in the shared world. And so far, no matter how much time we give people, they are still writing when the timer goes off. They are still writing. Imagination just needs a little nudge to run wild. Please rise in body or spirit for our hymn number 126, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. Please be seated. And one of the most interesting and inspiring for the imagination aspects that's both in science and science fiction is the idea of the multiverse. The multiverse. It's not just Marvel Comics having a block on that, it is everywhere. The multiverse idea being in science that there are multiple universes all around us, all at once, kind of part of that big bang. It keeps going and in vibrations and going outward and diversifying. And they're all right around each other as well. Just the idea that there might be a universe right next door, I find fascinating. But also in science fiction, we make use of that. We make use of that to explore what happens in alternate timelines, what happens in alternate worlds. You change the configuration and the physics of a place, and then, wow, where does that go? And what does that teach us? What story unravels and unfolds because the conditions are just a little bit different than our own? Well, I want to recognize that our current political, social moment has a certain other universe feel for many of us. This week, I was reminded of the summer and into the fall and how there was this joy for 100 days. There was this message of enthusiasm and joy that came out of compassion, that came from connecting leadership, people with people, that came from the possibility of an economic policy that would make life easier, building on the strong economy that's already happening, easier for the day to day people with help with childcare, starting a business, buying a house. There was a basic sense of we're going to live into respecting each person. What a radical idea in politics. And it was part of the conversation, it was part of the opportunity. Now, this is not to say that what was being offered for leadership and guidance and policy was perfect. It was far from it. It was not at all ideal. But there were people on deck who valued competence and education and information, and people that could be pushed to address the powerful concerns of our day, such as the genocide in Palestine, such as fossil fuels and its impact on our environment, the climate crisis we live in. And boy, it would have been really good to have a chance to unpack, maybe dismantle some of that corporate influence on government. There was joy for 100 days. But rather, this is the universe we have, where many of our friends and neighbors live in fear of what will happen. How far will attacks on immigrants go when so many of us are relatively recent newcomers to this country? Why spend precious legislative time on anti-trans bathroom bills, but to attack the vulnerable and exhaust the rest of us? Why, in this world, are we going to keep hearing about the losers and the winners and understand that the winners are very few and the losers are very great? So, we get to explore this universe. We get to wonder what if in this place and time. Walida Imarisha, in the book Octavia's Brood, says, whenever we try to envision a world without war, without violence, without prisons, without capitalism, we are engaging in speculative fiction. All organizing is speculative fiction. If that doesn't justify like more books and more people to talk about more things, I don't know. Like all organizing, getting together. Organizers and activists dedicate their lives to creating and envisioning another world or many other worlds. So, what better avenue for organizers to explore their work than science fiction stories? All organizing is science fiction because we are wondering and asking and planning and testing. We talk about this in church because we enjoy exploring imagination. Give folks in church, give folks in Unitarian Universalism something to chew on, something to engage with, and we will have a Thanksgiving feast. We will enter into it and wonder and explore and talk and imagine and dream. And we also will be organizing. And it occurred to me, I so appreciate there's some common threads here, that it strikes me that organizing is just as much an act of faith as it is science fiction as well. We are trying and putting ourselves out into something to see what happens. This is good work for a religious community, for any body of faith. Now, I want to recognize, as I talked about in religion last week, that religion certainly has been at the heart of many nightmares. It's not just about a good dream or good wondering or a wonderful world. The religion has been the cause and the source and the justification for multitudes of sorrows, for universes of suffering. But when religion is at its best, this is a place of hope and compassion, liberation and joy and justice. We wrestle with how we individually and together address the full scope of our lives. Religion covers everything, all the seasons, all the ages of our mortal and all too human selves amidst the earth and the stars. In the worst seasons and timelines as well as the best. My colleagues and I took up this question of the worst of times just recently with the idea of speculative fiction and how to get through the apocalypse. So we began with these questions that we were challenged with and a fantastic reading list, which we actually now have. Thank you to Jesse Laughlin, I'll say. We now have a way to share the books we've shared, the books that we've read with the congregation, and we'll be putting that into the newsletter. There's a website to go look and see what we talk about. We start with the question, my colleagues and I did, of beloved community. In what ways does speculative fiction offer guidance or wisdom to the experience and embodiment of creating beloved community? Our second question was, in the age of harmful misinformation, how does speculative fiction contribute to our understandings of truth? And the one that my partner and I were asked to wrestle with was that speculative fiction interrogates the ways in which human hubris and disconnect from the spirit inevitably lead to authoritarianism and exploitation of humanity and the earth. Yeah, we got the authoritarianism question. So in the context of this political movement, as escalating global fascism and irreversible climate collapse hurtle toward us, what does speculative fiction offer us as counsel about how we are to survive the apocalypses of our times? And the last question, what gifts and challenges does speculative fiction offer our ministries? So I started in on this conversation with a service back in October. That is online if you'd like to see it. I figured it seemed to make sense to follow up after the election and after my colleagues and I got together. Now, I want to say that if you are not a fan of speculative fiction, it's okay. Just go with the imagination piece, go with the organizing piece, go with how we do this together. But what we also experience, whether we see it in a fictional book or not, are times of great destruction in our society and in our human history. When the world seems to be and perhaps is at an end, when it seems like humanity is being swept away, what do we do then? Apocalypse, in the simplest definition, is a catastrophic destruction where the world is never the same after that event. People talk about varying degrees of the zombie apocalypse, whether slow or fast, take your pick. Whether it's a meteor strike, whether it's a plague, aliens come and find us. So many of the stories we write are kind of imagining, projecting an apocalypse that might happen in the future, something that's like, we have this level of where we are right now, but what happens in our society when we're entirely turned over when the zombies come? And then what happens after that? And it often operates under the assumption that an apocalypse is a future event. We're imagining what happens out there. But I want to say that part of what's also deeply part of the conversation about the human struggle is how much apocalypse has already been with us. It's a here and now thing, it's a past thing. It's already been with us for centuries, and not just one, but many. If you just take a look at the African experience, the Black experience, the depth of colonization and enslavement for the entire continent, if you will. Not just in our country for hundreds of years, but globally. If you look at the indigenous losses, how deeply that was impacting, wiping out multitudes of nations, of people, of tribes that will never be found again. Certainly, we should still take seriously the lesson of the Holocaust and how that impacted multitudes of people, including the Jewish people, but also those with disabilities, those who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning. And even more recently, we have things like the AIDS crisis we'll be talking about next week, how that decimated whole communities of men. And then, of course, there's the climate. We have layers and universes of disasters. Layers and universes right with us. Not out there, not in a dream, but right with us. My colleague, the Reverend Karen Armina, brought together several of these sources. Katie Hogan, in her discussion of River Solomon's book, An Unkindness of Ghosts, reminds us that Black people lived in a dystopian world long before research scientists discovered the Anthropocene. White supremacy, in addition to religious patriarchy and economic injustice and gender binaries, have made life on Earth a disaster for Black people and other marginalized cultures and communities for many centuries. In his introduction to Love After the End, an anthology of two-spirit and indigiqueer speculative fiction, Joshua Whitehead writes, "We have already survived the apocalypse. This right here, right now, is a dystopian event." Theologian and author and member of the Choctaw Nation, Stephen Charleston, in his book, We Survived the End of the World, Lessons from Native America on Apocalypse and Hope, agrees. It was the experience of the apocalypse, not just the fear of it that my ancestors faced, he says. If you wanted to find an experiential example of an apocalypse, you would be hard-pressed to find one more total than what North America's indigenous civilization confronted for more than 400 years. If apocalypse means cataclysmic destruction, in essence, the end of the world, my ancestors went through it. From a religious perspective, this is not new to Unitarian Universalism either. Reverend Rebecca Parker reflects on a liberal religious response to our post apocalyptic reality in her 2006 essay, After the Apocalypse. If we can imagine that the apocalypse is not ahead of us, but already behind us, consider how we might regard our religious task differently. That shift allows us to operate from the idea that the apocalypse has already happened and we are already dealing with it. It's not a single world ending event, but a larger cycle of time and history that is now impacting an ever larger number of people, or we're more aware of it. It's already been impacting us. Let's just be real about that. But we are more and more aware of this on the global scale as well as individually. And the impact is profound. This universe, this moment, is the coming true of some of our worst fears. There are forms that most of us didn't know were already in the works. You might be aware of the bill 9495 that's going through Congress at the moment that would give the ability to the president to take away nonprofit status for groups supposedly funding terrorist organizations. Even if they're simply fulfilling their mission and taking care of people. I was just on a call yesterday with the Universalist Conference Center at Ferry Beach. It's about to celebrate 100, 125 years of its existence and being one of the safest places for all people, especially trans and non-binary young adults and youth. They are deeply concerned about the implications of just this bill and how likely it will come into being in the next administration. The impact is all the more difficult when there was such a possibility of energy and joy. What would feed the effort of all we already have to do for human rights, for the environment, to address world conflict? I don't know about you, but I really was looking forward to being fed, not exhausted further. And it's okay to be exhausted and raging and depleted and in deep grief. This is partially why we don't do this alone, right? Reverend Parker offers a frame for the work. We can learn from past upheavals. She says, in the aftermath of the apocalypse, the religious enterprise can be imagined as a kind of salvage work, recognizing the resources that sustain and restore life, resources that are already at hand, not some distant promised tool. And salvage, which is, I had to think about this for a little bit, it's not the only tool, but salvage, it feels like you're just kind of taking up the leftovers when you're finding what is still there and precious. Because we've been doing this as human beings for a long time. We have been creating for centuries out of whatever we have at hand, externally and internally, our networks of care and mutuality and compassion. Beloved community, as used by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a love-centered way of thinking and speaking and acting and engaging that leads to personal and cultural and societal transformation. It is a dream, a premise that everyone is expected, everyone is able to thrive, everyone is able to benefit from a healthy ecosystem. This too is our world, can be our world. 20th century Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams reminds us of the basic liberal approach to religion that further equips us and inspires imagination, that our relationships must be mutual, not coerced. They are freely chosen. We hold on to that freedom. We also hold on to the moral call of creating a just and loving community in every moment we can, to bring values to life in real forms, not only dream, not only write, but really do so, the work. Social incarnation, if you will. To justify all of this work can be held in justifying an attitude of ultimate optimism, although certainly not immediate. Ultimate optimism. I found this in the science fiction world of Star Wars. As I was thinking about this, we have the character of Rose Tico. She is among the rebels fighting the Empire. She's not a Jedi. She doesn't wear a cape. She doesn't have special powers. She simply is involved and loves. In the movie The Last Jedi, she risks her life to save the person she loves. And he is surprised. Like, why did you risk your life to save mine? Why? And she said, silly. That's how we're going to win. Not fighting what we hate, but saving what we love. Not fighting what we hate, saving what we love. Sometimes it takes a fictional character to bring the world into focus and remind us of how we don't just survive, but thrive. And that we do so together. As Adrienne Marie Brown says in the reading, our premise is that if we want worlds that work for more of us, we have to be involved in the visioning process. We're not creating and imagining in isolation, but together whenever possible. Octavia Butler, one of our great ancestors in science fiction, a Black woman author and teacher, reminds us there are thousands of answers, and you can be one of them if you choose to be. From Adrienne Marie Brown, we hold so many worlds inside of us, so many futures. It is our radical responsibility to share these worlds, to plant them in the soil of our society as seeds for the type of justice we want and we need. There are so many worlds. We are full of them. Remember that organizing? It's science fiction. There are so many worlds. Ruha Benjamin says, remember to imagine and craft the worlds you cannot live without, just as you dismantle the ones you cannot live within. We imagine that world, maybe reverse engineer it, work backwards, and then work forwards into that horizon, bringing along one another, saving the world, saving the worlds contained in each of us. There are so many universes, and this is ours. Again, from Walida Imarisha. Whenever we try to envision a world without war, without violence, without prisons, without capitalism, we are engaging in speculative fiction. It's all organizing is science fiction. We are so much called to dream, to be, to do, and to dream again. Let us go forth into all that is complicated, into all that is hard and heartbreaking, and let us keep dreaming and creating these brave new worlds together. Amen. Please join me for our closing hymn, number 1018, Come and Go With Me, Rise and Body Your Spirit. It is imagining where we might go.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
The Reverend Joseph Cherry. If we have any hope of transforming and changing ourselves, we must be bold enough to step into our discomfort, brave enough to be clumsy there, and loving enough to forgive ourselves and others. May we as a people of faith be granted to be so bold, so brave, so loving. May it be so. Our worship is ended. Let our service begin.